rescue one American who very prominently was on our show about 2 weeks ago. Remember, we talked live to Haroon, who was trying to get out and back to Colorado. Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton helped him get back. He served in Afghanistan, member of the Senate Armed Services Committee. Senator, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Morning, guys.
So as we detailed, the guy Brian just talked to, Cori Bush, who helped rescue that mother and Cori Mills, that is, the mother and her children. Turns out the State Department now trying to take credit for it. They just showed up at the very end. They pretty much stood in the way from start to almost the finish. But at the end, they're saying, hey, welcome to the embassy. Now they're claiming credit for the administration.
Yeah, Steve, first off, let me commend Cori Mills and so many other veterans over the last 3 weeks who have worked tirelessly, who have sacrificed their time and their money in many cases to help our fellow Americans get out of Afghanistan, or in some cases, the Afghan interpreters who serve loyally beside them. They are some real heroes of this tragedy. It's not surprising to me, though, the State Department higher-ups have come rushing in anytime they see a good news story and try to take credit for it, since it's really been nothing but bad news for Joe Biden and Tony Blinken's State Department. And it continues to be the case that we have perhaps hundreds of Americans effectively held hostage by the Taliban inside of Afghanistan who are probably trying to extract who knows what kinds of concessions from the Biden administration. I worry that they'll grant those concessions because they simply want Afghanistan off the front pages and out of the minds of the American people. But as long as our fellow citizens are stranded there, Americans are not going to forget this catastrophe.
You know, Cori Mills does head a private team of military veterans and has been working with the Sentinel Foundation, who's helping to support them financially to do this. And, you know, I saw Ron Klain over the weekend. He's the chief of staff for President Biden, says there's about 100 left. We've been in touch with all of them. There's no way that's true. And according to Cori Mills, there's many more than 100 left. And outside Kabul, no one's gotten out. Senator, we sit there, you're working the phone. Senator Blumenthal, as a left-wing Senate Democrat, he's outraged too. Are we just going to sit there and take it and allow them to play politics with people's lives and embarrass us internationally? Is there anything we can do?
No, Brian, you're right. We're not. And you're right that Senator Blumenthal and his team has been working on this issue very hard. We've worked with them as well, trying to get these Americans out of Afghanistan. I understand the administration wants to turn the page. They want this out of the news. They want to focus on their reckless $3.5 trillion spending bill. But there's a lot of members of Congress who are not going to rest until every American and every legal permanent resident in Afghanistan can get out of Afghanistan. We're working on trying to get people out across the borders or on flights out of Afghanistan and some of the outlying cities. We are not going to forget our fellow Americans who have been left behind in Afghanistan.
Yeah, when you look at the polls, it says 60% disapprove the way that Biden has handled Afghanistan, only 30% approve. There is some stunning video, too, out of Germany. This is at the, the Ramstein Air Base? Yes, they're welcoming these Afghan refugees. And look at this video. This is a 2-mile runway. It's covered in tents. This is a tent city now. And I was listening to Rick Grinnell, and he was saying that he's being told, because remember, he was the ambassador there, and he said he's being told by people that he worked with that the Biden administration is rushing people through if they don't even have the proper documents. Are you worried about the vetting process?
I'm incredibly worried, Ainsley. I think that tent city gives the lie to what Joe Biden has been saying, that they plan for every contingency. If they had known that all this was going to come to pass, they wouldn't have slapped together a tent city on a runway at Ramstein Air Base in the span of just a couple days. But we've had many reports of Afghans who have failed our vetting processes, as meager as those are. Some of them have even come to America and then been sent elsewhere. But in many cases, in the early days after the fall of Kabul, Afghans who had no particular ties to our military, who had not provided direct support to our troops over the last 20 years, were able to get on planes and get out of the country. And in many cases, we have no way to vet them. We have no sources on the ground in Afghanistan anymore. They can run a name or a supposed name and maybe some fingerprints through our incomplete databases. And if it doesn't come back with a hit, they say, well, you must be good to go. Well, we have no idea who these people are, whether or not they pose a security risk, whether or not they accept our way of life here in terms of constitutional government and the equality of all citizens, or if they are even in violation of U.S. laws against trafficking. I mean, we've heard reports from Fort McCoy in Wisconsin, for instance, of grown men showing up with children as their so-called brides, or polygamous marriages as well. This all goes back to Joe Biden's failure to execute the decision to withdraw from Afghanistan, leaving behind tens of thousands of Afghans who did support our troops, who did serve loyally beside us, while bringing out of Afghanistan tens of thousands of Afghans who may have had no connection whatsoever.
Well,
and all of our allies have said that they're going to have to come to America eventually unless we find some other place for them.
Well, Senator, should we be surprised at the perhaps lack of vetting as people come into the United States via Afghanistan? Look at the vetting that's going on our southern border. For the most part, it's just, hey, come on in, call an ICE office someday when you feel like it, and we'll set up a court date.
Yeah, they share a lot of similarities, Steve, but it's shocking that the Biden administration is saying that the Afghan border is closed and there's nothing they can do to help get Americans down across the Afghan border, or they're going to help neighboring countries like Tajikistan and Uzbekistan secure its border, while our border is still wide open. I mean, most of these Afghans who supported us in Afghanistan, who Joe Biden left behind, would have a better chance of getting to the U.S. if they could somehow get a flight to Mexico and cross our southern border.
Senator,
that is appalling.
Right, Senator, right now, what is our military base being used for? A daycare center for all the unaccompanied minors? Now we understand that the bases have been told to make spots for 50,000 Afghans on our military bases. Do you know how much this operation is costing us? They say an average Afghan, $250,000. Don't say that our cities are poor or we need this type of spending. We are wasting so much money on the worst evacuation and end to a conflict in the history of our country. 50,000 spots in military bases. Do we have any room to train anybody except to sit there and house people that really, in many cases, don't belong here?
And Brian, the demands on our personnel are massive as well. It's going to end up costing billions of dollars. And in many of these bases, it'll be akin to what we have seen at the border. You know, I've been to the border earlier this year. We saw Border Patrol officers who signed up to be law enforcement actually having to work as nannies and babysitters and daycare operators, watching out for all of the children that were showing up at the border. Now we're impressing soldiers into doing the same thing, when you're right, they should be training. They should be focusing on the mission of deterring our adversaries, to say nothing of the billions of dollars this is going to cost American taxpayers.
All right, Senator, just stick around for us if you would. We're going to talk about Gitmo and then get your reaction after this report, please. The accused mastermind of 9/11, those attacks, will return to the Guantanamo Bay courtroom within the next few hours.
Lucas Tomlinson is live at Gitmo. He's on the island ahead of the hearing. Lucas, good morning.
Good morning, guys. 20 years after the 9/11 attacks, the accused mastermind Khalid Sheikh Mohammed has never faced a trial. One of the victim's brothers doubts justice will ever be served.
Oh, I don't expect too much out of them this week. Those hearings down there have been a comedy of errors for years now. We've got a schedule that's not conducive to justice. We've got a defense team that has no interest in justice.
Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, better known by his initials KSM, charged with killing nearly 3,000 people on 9/11, his idea to hijack airliners and use them as flying bombs. Born in Kuwait, KSM went to a small college in North Carolina before graduating to a life of terrorism beginning in Afghanistan. He will be in the courtroom here at Gitmo along with 4 other high-profile prisoners in about an hour, including his nephew. They are not expected to say anything. Today, largely procedural, the defense team meeting their 6th military judge. KSM is one of 39 prisoners remaining here, down from a height of 680 during the Bush administration. Today, it costs nearly $13 million a year to house each prisoner, compared to $70,000 a year for a convicted terrorist at the Supermax prison in Colorado. So about an hour from now, the prisoners will be put into the courtroom. Fox News will be there, sitting behind some very thick glass. Guys?
I bet. All right, Lucas, thank you very much. Let's bring back in Senator Tom Cotton. Senator, here we are the week of September 11th, 20 years later, and these guys have not been brought to justice. But at the same time, it's a problematic case because in the beginning they were detained by the CIA and, they were waterboarded and stuff like that. And then the Supreme Court said, you got to pass a law. And so what did? They sent the FBI to interview them, I think in 2007, because they said anything they said while they were during the enhanced interrogation, you can't use. So they did it again, and now you've got these lawyers, their defense lawyers, saying the stuff that the FBI got out of them can't be used in court. So where are we?
Well, it's a disgrace that KSM is still drawing breath on this earth, and most of the people at Guantanamo. I've long said that these people, after they were finished with any useful intelligence value, should have faced a summary court-martial and execution. But you have an army of liberal lawyers and judges in Washington who are apparently more sympathetic to these terrorist masterminds than they are to the 9/11 families. These proceedings need to move along, though. They need to move along as quickly as they can so those families can finally get the justice that they have so long been denied.
But remember, because we got them, because we kept them, we were able to get intelligence that allowed us to identify the courier that allowed us to kill bin Laden. So these guys have some value to us, even though the further they're removed from the battlefield, the less value they got. Remember, he admitted to everything. They said that he would sit up on a dry erase board and describe the whole hierarchy of al-Qaeda. They've been invaluable. So if they throw out the enhanced interrogation, I'm worried about the case.
Yeah, Brian, they had continuing intelligence value for years after the 9/11 attacks. And obviously, if we release them, they're valuable as well. Some of the former Guantanamo prisoners that Barack Obama released in return for a traitorous American soldier have gone back onto the battlefield in Afghanistan in leadership roles. So the detainees at Guantanamo not only had continuing intelligence value, they have continuing operational value to their terrorist allies in Afghanistan and around the world.
Well, it is super frustrating because people would like to see justice. Senator, thank you very much for joining us on this Tuesday.
Thank you, Senator.